We are very honored to invite Richard to give this exciting seminar. He is the founder for Art of Problem Solving, which I think everyone in this room knows and everyone use their books and we all love it. And he has a lot of achievement listed on the screen. I don't want to take away too much of his time with all his winner. And then I think the students just expressed they all love you. So I will stop sharing. I will let Richard share. So during the seminar, we prefer no chat. So I will turn the chat off. He will save the save all the question to the Q&A session, and we'll please mute yourself. Okay, great.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to go through this talk, and then I'm going to be happy to take questions when I get to the end. For those of you who don't know me or my work, over the last 35 years or so, I've worked with many of the top mathematical minds in the entire country and all around the world. It started off with a math contest, a lot like the one that you're participating in right now. Well, actually, it wasn't exactly like the contest you're participating in right now, because in 1983, there was no internet. So a little bit different, but still the same in spirit. Now, I didn't win that contest. I don't think I came particularly close, but I was exposed there to a lot of really fascinating math, and more importantly, to a lot of really fascinating people. So that was a start of a journey for me, of where I got to meet tons of really amazing people and learn a lot more math. Over the next few years, it took me several years to finally learn enough math to do well in local and state competitions, and then a few more years to do well enough in national competitions. And we'll talk a little bit more about how I did that later. But I have had the opportunity, first as my peers and competitors, to work with amazing mathematical minds. And then later, they would become my close friends. Most of my close friends, even now, are people I met in middle school, in high school, in events like this one. They would become my college classmates. And some of these brilliant minds became my coworkers. And then now, for the last about 20 years, they've been my students. So for those of you who are not familiar with the art of problem solving, we develop textbooks, online schools, online resources, and we have learning centers around the country designed for students who really love math, really love problem solving. We've been doing this for a long time. We started off in middle and high school, and then we moved down to elementary school. So I heard some of you mentioning Beast Academy. And those of you who have been using Beast Academy, maybe you recognize me if you've been using our online system, because I made about 800 videos for Beast Academy. So they've been, first, these brilliant minds were my peers and competitors. They became my friends, my college classmates, my coworkers, and then my students. And I've been doing this long enough that now some of those students are now my coworkers. And maybe that's an idea for you when you grow up a little bit more, to come here and join us at Art of Problem Solving. But many of these brilliant mathematical minds are pursuing careers way outside mathematics. Maybe sometimes it'll be a little close to math, but they're not all mathematicians. Some of them have been part of building multi-billion-dollar companies. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about what all of these brilliant mathematical minds, what all these brilliant problem solvers have in common. Now, we're going to focus on the verb that you see on the screen there, prepare. But how you change the world, that's going to be up to you. Now, we're going to start right here. This is a good one for me to start with because I'm the only one with the microphone in this room right now. Now, it's natural to try to be the smartest person in the conversation. I get it. But you've got to fight that urge. If you find that you're the smartest person in the room, you have to find another room. That was a cue for somebody to log out. I didn't see anybody leave. So one of you is supposed to log out now. You can't learn from other people when you are trying to show them how smart you are. You can learn from them when they are sharing their wisdom with you. Now, it's probably hard for some of you to ask questions. You know, you're the one that's used to having all the answer. People ask you questions, so it's hard for you to reach out. And I know, I remember when I was a student, the first time I got to a math camp and I didn't understand a lecture at all. It took me a very long time to get up the courage to ask the professor what was going on. I asked him, I didn't understand his answer, and then I didn't ask him again. I didn't ask any more questions for the 4 or 5 weeks I was there, and I didn't learn anything. It was a terrible experience. If I had just had the courage to ask questions, I would have learned a whole lot more. Now, for those of you who have a hard time asking questions, find a strategy that makes it fun. Like you ask them, find a fun way to ask, they say something and you say, okay, can you please, somebody's playing with the screen. You ask them a question, and if they answer and they give you an answer and you still don't quite understand it, you say, okay, let's try it again, but use different words to explain it to me. And if they explain it again and you still don't understand it, say, all right, let's try this one more time. Smaller words. You can make it fun for yourself. You might make it fun for them. You'll get over that being brave enough to ask questions. Now, I saw a great example of this when I was a bond trader for 4 years after I graduated from college. And we had one guy on our desk who just seemed to know a whole lot more about what was going on in the financial world than the rest of us did. And he traded European hours, which meant he showed up. I was in New York. He'd show up at midnight and work until 7 or 8 in the morning. So I didn't overlap with him much. Not many people did. So nobody really knew what he was doing to learn all of this information. And I decided one time to just come in early. I told him, I was like, Nav, I'm going to come in early. I'm going to come in at 3 or 4. And I'm just going to watch you do your thing. I'm going to watch and try to figure out how you're learning so much. So I sat on the desk with him while he was making phone calls. All he did was ask questions. Sometimes just the same question over and over and over again. He changed the words just a little bit. And I'd ask him, be like, Nav, you've already asked this question. You already know the answer. And he's like, I think I know the answer. But if I keep asking, whoever I'm asking is eventually going to get to something that I don't understand. And then I'm going to learn. And this is all he did all day long, every day. And he amassed an enormous amount of information that no one else in the room had. So sit back and listen. But you won't just learn from the people who are around you. Books allow you to grab ideas from across time, from across space. You can learn from people from hundreds of years ago, from the other side of the world, just by reading what they've written. When I was in elementary school, I did not start off as a math person. Math was not the way I showed that, hey, I'm really interested in learning. It was reading. I started reading very early, and my parents might say no to a toy. They might say no to candy, but they would never, ever say no to a book. So I read everything in sight. There were books all over the house. And I learned some fascinating things from books when I was very young. First of all, I learned that there are ideas out there in the world that don't originate in my own head. There were things out there that I could know that my parents didn't know, and that was really cool. And probably most importantly, I learned that you could create entire worlds just with words. You can create ideas, create whole worlds just by writing. Now, when I'm talking about writing, I'm not talking about writing texts. I'm not talking about writing on Facebook. I'm talking about I'm not talking about reading texts, reading Facebook, definitely not reading Twitter. I'm talking about reading something that someone spent a lot of time and constructed very, very carefully, that they thought very deeply about when they were doing their own writing. And you're going to learn from reading that, not just whatever it is they're writing about, but you are going to learn how to write well yourself, because someday it's going to be your turn and you're going to have to write. Now, I know about Snapchat and Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, but the written word is still the way that we communicate with the entire world. Writing allows you to reach across space, to reach across time. There aren't many people watching videos from stuff from 1950, and there aren't many videos from before 1900. But plenty of people are still reading lots of words written long, long time ago. Writing allows you to have an outsized impact on the world. So you have to be able to write. And I don't mean just 280 characters at a time on Twitter. Now, we at Art of Problem Solving, we start a lot of our interviews with writing tests, even our math curriculum positions. We don't start with a math test. We start with a writing test, because writing is the main way that we reach our students, reach their parents, and reach their teachers. Now, writing is not just for communicating with other people. It's not just for sharing your ideas with other people. It also helps you formulate ideas for yourself. And one of the best ways I have for thinking and really understanding what I believe and why I believe it is just sitting down and trying to write it out. Write out the ideas, try to justify what I'm thinking, and it really helps clarify my thinking, helps me understand what I believe and why. Now, when I talk about writing, I don't mean the writing that you do for school. I don't mean the writing that you do for standardized tests. I mean writing something that somebody else wants to read, not writing something that somebody else has to be paid to read. And you'll know you're doing that when somebody covers it with red ink, hands it back to you, and says, you got to do it again, do it again. That's when you know that you're learning how to write. But if you don't want to write words, you have another option. You can learn how to write code. Because we're all going to work for the computer someday. We're all going to work for the computer someday. And the people who know how to talk to them, well, maybe the computers will let them work longest and we'll eat them last. Now, we at Art of Problem Solving, we have a lot of companies. The big companies, the companies a lot of you are going to want to work for, and some of you will work for, they come to us all the time trying to hire our students, trying to hire our alumni. And, they know us as the math company. Many of the top math students in the country over the last 15 years have come through Art of Problem Solving. But when they come talk to me, the first thing they ask for, they ask me for people who can program. They ask me for programmers. So I'm like, all right. I know a lot of good programmers. Here are a few good programmers. And they're like, great. Yeah, these really are really great programmers. Second thing they ask me for, more programmers. So, all right. So I introduce them to a few more programmers. And finally, the third thing they ask me for, they say, all right. How about some really good math people? I know what they're thinking. They're thinking we can take that math person and we can turn her into a programmer. So if you can write code and you really love writing code, you're never going to go hungry. You're going to be able to find a job. You're going to be able to find a job doing something you love to do, because this is a very powerful skill that's going to be very much in demand for a very long time. Now, I don't want to say that programming is just about getting jobs. It's not just about getting jobs, because not everybody can fight with the machines all day, every day. I've done it for a few years, and that's not for me. I'm not going to be able to do this every day for years and years on end. I don't love it enough. If you do, you're going to be fine. But if you don't, it's still a very powerful tool, because whatever you're going to do, there's going to come a time when you have an idea. You have an idea and, well, you'd like to just make a prototype, play with it a little bit, maybe get it out in the world, let some people play with it before you decide if you really want to invest in it. Or maybe you have an idea and you have some data and you need to manipulate it somehow. And, well, if you don't know how to code, you can't do that yourself. If you know how to code, you can just do the work. You can just build the prototype, manipulate the data, and move on. But if you don't know how to code, you have to do something that's really, really hard. You have to be nice to a programmer. I got to tell you, that's hard. That's hard, because you know what? The programmers, they don't have to be nice back. They don't have to be nice back, because that's what being in demand is all about. So if you know how to code, you can do your thing, just move on. If you don't know how to code, you got to go work with a programmer. But I do got to tell you something. If you do learn how to code and you can just code the thing yourself and you're working with programmers, a thing I'd like you to try to do, go over to the programmer, be nice to them anyway, but don't ask for anything. It'll completely blow their minds. We are having some chaos going on.
Participant.
Stop
and
writing on the screen.
Please disable annotation.
Stop writing.
Turn off the annotation. Mr. Rip.
Let's do that. There we go.
Oh my God. What?
Oh my
God.
You gotta clear it. You gotta clear it. You gotta clear it.
Yeah, you can clear it, and then nobody can do anything.
Disable.
Has been
Disable
disabled.
chat, disable annotating, disable unmuting.
I know, yeah.
Disable chat.
Annotating is disabled.
So we are all suspended.
Just stop share and reshare.
Disable everything.
Mr. Richard, you should unshare and then reshare. I think it will work then.
Disable
Ah,
everything.
try that.
Be quiet.
I love it. Y'all have
Are we
way more
going to become
experience than
suspended?
the rest of us
Are we
do.
going
Yes,
to
go.
become suspended? Quiet.
This is the chaos of the world.
We can't hear.
Awesome.
Disable.
Hello.
All right. here-
Are we
so people
suspended?
unmute.
Are we suspended?
No, just shush.
All right. So we took care of the annotation. I love it. This is one of the great things about being in a room with a whole bunch of really, really smart students. When things go wrong, they can fix it. Thank you very much. But programming, again, not just about jobs, not just about helping yourself along whenever you're stuck. It's also about helping you find new ways to think about problems. So I've talked to a lot of these brilliant problem solvers I've talked about before. A lot of the best problem solvers I've worked with, when I ask them kind of what were the formative learning experiences for them in thinking about different types of problems, one of the most important was learning how to program, because that's a different style of thinking. It's a different way of approaching problems that they can then take and transfer to other places. Like I've taken a lot of what I learned from programming into my thinking about how to just organize my company. Now, organizing a company has nothing to do with programming a computer, but a lot of the same thought processes can be brought from one to the other. Now, one thing I like to do with code is play. And I'm betting y'all like this one. When I say play, I'm not just talking about playing video games. And I get it. You know, if video games were as good back when I was a student as they are now, I might still be living with mom and dad, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants that at all. But fortunately for me, the video games back then weren't very good back then. If I wanted to play a game, I had to write the code first. I had to make the game. And that's why I learned how to code in the first place. Who are we kidding? It's probably why some of you are learning how to code. But it turns out that I liked making the game a lot more than I liked playing the game. But play allows us to interact with the world in a really low stakes way. You know, it doesn't matter if you win, doesn't matter if you lose, you're just playing, you're just exploring, you're just experiencing something, perhaps something new.
Did you make any games?
Oh, I made all sorts of games when I was young. They were all terrible. But I learned how to code.
Minesweeper.
Are there any games we play right now?
Did you know how to code?
All right, we're gonna hold
I've never played any game. Never played any video. I never played video game. Me too. Me three.
Guys, can you not interrupt me?
Same.
I'll take questions at the end. Thanks.
Well, there's like 250, 260.
Just be quiet.
All right. But this playing, this desire to play and explore and play with the world is something we kind of often we lose as we age. And so I'm going to ask you, don't let go of that. Don't let go of that, because play is about doing things for the sake of doing them. Now, speaking of getting older, how many, I just want to see raised hands, no yelling and screaming here, all right? Raised hands, how many of you are middle schoolers? Oh, we've got a lot of hands going up. All right, that's great. Now I have news for you. I get it. Middle school is hard. For those who are younger, you're going to see it. Middle school is hard. It's hard socially for some of us who love math and love computer science and love learning. Things will get better. I remember middle school. I remember my middle school. The most important thing was how well you could play basketball. That was the most important thing. The second most important thing was probably how pretty you were. Those were the important things, at least that's the way it seemed to me. All the trophies in the school were for basketball and all the popular people were beautiful. So I didn't think this math stuff was that important until I went to a math competition and saw all of these people who thought it was valuable. And perhaps the most important thing I saw there was I saw adults who were there and were happy about people being able to do math that weren't their kids and weren't their students. And I had never seen anything like that. The only time I had seen adults cheering for other kids that weren't their own was at a basketball game. Now in high school, you'll start to see it. You'll start to see it a little bit more. In high school, the people who are doing well in school, the people who are doing well in math, doing well in science, they're going to start to get a little more popular. People are going to start to find them a little bit more interesting because they're going to see that those people, they're going somewhere. They're going to do something. And by the time you get to college, it just becomes obvious. Now in college, the jocks are still cool. The beautiful people will still have a crowd of people following them around. That doesn't change. But a third group emerges, and everybody wants to be part of them. Everybody wants to be a part of them because that is the group that is going to build the future. That's the group that's going to build the world. This group, these are the geeks. These are my people. Now, you may not believe now in your middle school or in your elementary school how important the geeks will become, how important, how powerful, how much you'll be able to do with these skills, but they get cool very fast. In fact, they run all the biggest companies in the world. If you go look at all the top 10, top 20 companies, and you look at the backgrounds of the people who run those companies, almost all of them are engineers, computer scientists, applied mathematicians. They're all geeks. A world full of people like the people in this room right now. So the world is a much better, more interesting place than middle school. Now, after playing for a while, it's time to get serious. And when that play is physical, that getting serious means exercise. Your mind is part of your body. So you've got to get in shape and stay in shape. Maybe not as in shape as this dude right here, but if you could get that in shape, that would be pretty cool. That is a pretty tough exercise right there. For me, if I go a week without any exercise, everything starts to fall apart. I start to have trouble sleeping. I have trouble working, and finally it gets to the point where my wife will just be like, go downstairs, exercise, go get in the garage, do something, and things will start to get straight. Now, when I say exercise, I don't mean go join a sport, go join a team so you can put something on your college application. This has nothing to do with your college application. It doesn't matter if you join a team. When I say exercise, choose whatever you're going to do. Maybe you'll run, maybe you'll lift weights, maybe you'll play a sport, or maybe you'll do whatever this guy's doing. Whatever you will actually do each week or multiple times a week, whatever you'll do, that's the right exercise for you. And once you're ready to face all sorts of challenges, you need to get out there and explore. Try lots of things. I mean, really try it. When I say try lots of things, I don't mean just try it once, decide you stink at it, and then quit. Because anything that's worth doing, you're going to stink at the first time you do it. Everything that's worth doing is hard in the beginning. So give it a real try. You try something new, give it a few weeks, a few months before deciding that it's not for you. But after a few weeks, after a few months, if you decide something is really not for you, and sometimes it'll be after a few years, it's okay to move on. It's okay to finally say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. It's okay for you to go to mom and dad and say, 4 years of violin lessons is enough. I'm ready to move on. And one important strategy for making that work, for being able to go to mom and dad and say, I'm not doing this anymore, is to say, mom and dad, I'm not doing this because I want to do this instead. Have something else that you're transitioning to. If you go to mom and dad and say, I'm not going to play violin and I'm going to play video games all day, that's probably not going to work. Hopefully you'll find something more interesting than video games to put in that other lane. But explore, get out there, try a lot of things, try it long enough so that you understand what it's going to take to get good at it, and you understand how much you will really enjoy it if you do get good at it. And then when you decide it's not for you, it's time to move on. But eventually, while you're doing this exploring, I mean, the real goal here is to find that thing that you're really going to love, that thing that you're going to want to do all day long, maybe not every single day, but lots of days. It's the things you're going to do on Saturday afternoon when you got time and you got nothing else to do. Or it's the thing that you're going to start doing so much that you're going to stop doing other things, that thing that you want to get really, really great at. And that's when it's time to learn how to excel. This is the most important thing you can learn while you're in school. It's the most important thing you can learn. Probably, one of the most important things you're going to learn in your life is how to get really great at something. So you're going to find something, hopefully, elementary school, middle school, high school, find something that you want to get really good at, and then go out there and do it. Learn how to get great at that. For me, it was math competitions. And you aren't really learning how to do something great, how to do something really well, until you're forced to confront failure, until you get to a point in whatever you're trying to do that you can't go further without a whole lot of work, without a change in your strategy, without investing a lot more of yourself and a lot more of your time. Now, for me, when I was doing competitions, I started in, I guess, 7th grade doing math competitions. And it took me a couple years, 2-3 years to start winning state and local competitions. I was in Alabama. I live in California now. It's a little bit tougher state. But I was in Alabama and I started winning these state and local competitions. So I started to think I was really getting there. I was really getting good at this math stuff. My sophomore year, I did well enough on the AMC tests. Then it was called the ASME, then the AME, then the USAMO, to get invited to the Math Olympiad program. And back then, that was a training camp of 24 students, and they would take the top 6 students, and those would be that would make the United States math team. Now, I was from Alabama, so I had never met anybody who had gone to this training camp. So when I made it to the camp, I was pretty sure I might be the smartest person in the world. No one from Alabama had ever done this before. So I go off to this camp pretty confident I'm the smartest person in the world. And I'm there for 5 weeks. And every other day we have a practice test. Practice test is 3 or 4 questions, and you have 3 or 4 hours. So these are pretty hard problems. So over the 5 weeks I'm there, I see maybe 50, 60, 70 problems. And during those 5 weeks, I got exactly none correct. Not a single one. So definitely not the smartest person in the world, not the smartest person in the world at all. So I had to figure out what was going wrong here. Why couldn't I succeed here like I had succeeded at all the other levels? I figured it was because I didn't know as much math as all those other students. So I took the next year and I was determined I was going to learn a whole lot more formulas and theorems. See, I had this stack of formula sheets. It was like this. And over the next year, I learned more and more and more and more and more. My formula sheet stack got higher and higher, and I was learning so much math. At least I thought I was learning all these formulas, all these theorems, because I was going to get back to that camp. I was going to show them what I could do. So I got back there my junior year. I got back to this camp with 23, 24 students, and I was going to show them what I could do. Same drills the year before. We got 5 weeks, got a practice test every other week, 3 or 4 questions, 3 or 4 hours. And I showed them what I could do. Over those 5 weeks, I still couldn't do any of the problems. Didn't get a single one. That strategy, that whole year, learning more and more theorems, more and more formulas, didn't help at all. Didn't help at all. And this is where I really had to learn to change my strategy. I had to learn that what I was doing wasn't math. What I was doing was just memorizing. I'm older now. I can't memorize anything at all because I got to tell you, software gets better, hardware gets worse. You'll see it's coming. This memorizing was not a great strategy. It's a much worse strategy now that we have computers that can do all the memorizing for us. So when I went back my senior year, I knew I had to do something different. Maybe I didn't need to learn more and more formulas. Maybe I needed to know fewer formulas, but be able to create them when I needed them. So I went back through my formula sheets and I looked at each one and I thought, why is that true? And I realized I had no idea for a lot of them. So I went back and started trying to prove a lot of them. Some of them I could, most of them I couldn't at first. And then I would start to get there. I would start to prove a few here and there and start to get a few more. It was the first time that I was actually doing math. It was the first time that I was doing something that felt like creating knowledge. Now, of course, these formulas were already known by the rest of the world, but this was the first time I was exploring and being able to connect things and being able to explain why things were true. So that year, when I got to the Olympiad problems at the end of the year, I actually could handle some of them. I still wasn't the smartest person in the world. I did win the US. I was one of the Olympiad winners. I did not make the US team. So I wasn't the smartest person in the world, but I could handle some of these problems. I could solve some problems that I had never seen before. And that is the key of what I call problem solving, solving problems that you'd never seen before. And that is where I learned how to excel, how to get over this wall. It took me 2 years to do that. And I really came to appreciate that when I got to college. I went off to college, I went to Princeton, and I came from this high school that was aggressively average. We had a 2/3 graduation rate. Maybe 15% of us went straight to a 4-year college. Even the football team went 5-5 every year. Very average school. So I'm going off to Princeton. I'm going to be competing against students who went to magnet schools, who went to really expensive private schools. And I was worried about the other students, these other students coming in, having training that I didn't have, that they'd have a huge advantage over me. But I found out, and it happened very fast, right in the first few weeks, I found out I had it backwards. I had training that they didn't have. And that training didn't come in school. It came in these math competitions. Because college exams, 3 or 4 problems, 3 or 4 hours. And the problems on those exams don't look anything like the homework. It's a completely different experience than kids have in high school, even in those fancy schools. But it was exactly the experience that I spent 2 years figuring out how to handle. So I could handle that walking right in the door in college, whereas it took some of my classmates 2 or 3 years of college to figure out how to do it. And many of them never did because they gave up along the way, switched from math and science, switched into something else, thinking they weren't smart enough to do those problems. When it wasn't that they weren't smart enough, they just weren't prepared. And it wasn't just math. It wasn't just math. I found this in every single one of my classes, in physics, chemistry, engineering, economics, philosophy, anything that required taking basic ideas and combining them to solve problems I hadn't seen before. I could handle that walking in the door. So this critical skill that I'm talking about here, this critical skill that you're developing while you're working on math competitions, that you can take it into many, 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 many other areas. And this is the critical skill that D.E. Shaw was wanted when they hired me, when I went and was a bond trader for 4 years. It's also the critical skill that I've been using to build a company for the last 20 years. This skill, learning how to learn, how you best operate, what you need to avoid to succeed, that's important as well. This critical skill is the most important thing you can learn during your school years. And this is the critical skill, this ability to learn how to learn is the critical skill because you have no idea what specific skill you're going to need later. When I look back at all the things I've done in the last, let's call it 25 to 30 years since I graduated from college, most of the jobs I've had, most of the tools I've used did not exist when I was in high school. So how could my middle school teachers or my high school teachers think, okay, this is the thing Richard's going to need in 15 years, when most of the things I need, most of the things I'm going to do did not exist then. The world changed really, really fast for me. It's going to change much faster for you. And you're going to have to be able to adapt. Now, that's a great thing. That's a great thing because the world changing really fast, that means lots of new and interesting things are going to happen. And the ability to adapt and change and learn with them, I think all of you are probably going to be pretty good at it. But to explore and excel, you're going to need time. You're going to need time. And I see this today as students get into middle school and get into high school, they get into all these extracurricular activities just so they have something to put on the application for Fair Harvard. And I got to tell you, Harvard's not all that. And I'm not just saying that because I went to Princeton. Princeton's not all that either. These students are filling up all of you. You'll see it. So those of you in middle school and high school are starting to do it already. You're filling up all your time. You don't have any free time to just explore and excel on the things you really want to do. And I saw this, I heard this firsthand, how important it is to have time. When I was on an advisory board, there's a website being created for future scientists, and they had an advisory board with a lot of luminaries in various scientific fields. So there were Nobel laureates on this panel. There was the president of MIT, the president of Carnegie Mellon. Like there were some really, really accomplished people in various areas of science. And I was in a group of 10 or 12 of them. And I asked them what was the most important thing they did in middle school or high school to help them become the success that they would eventually become. Every single one of them answered with something they did in their free time. It wasn't an assignment. It wasn't something they did for a trophy. It wasn't something they did for school. It was something they did on the weekends because they were interested in it. In the summer, when they didn't have so much to do. It was something they did when they had unstructured free time. That was the critical experience for them eventually learning how to excel. And this was true for me. You've heard me talk about my high school. My high school that, a lot of your parents might move to another neighborhood to get away from. But for me, my high school was great. I had very little homework. I only took 2 AP exams and somehow I survived. I had lots and lots of time. So with that time, I had time to figure out what my goals were, to figure out what path to follow to achieve those goals, and then to develop the discipline to stay on that path. All because I had lots and lots of time. And that right there, figure out the goals, find the path, stay on the path. Great training for what I do now. What I do now, I run a company. We have a very simple goal. A very simple goal is to discover, inspire, and train the great problem solvers of the next generation. Sounds like a simple goal, but how do you do it? Well, that's the second step there, is you got to figure out the path, because there's no syllabus for it. Nobody's going to tell you how to do it. You have to figure it out on your own. So you build a really good team around you and you start to figure that out, and then you develop the discipline to stay on that path. So all that free time I had in that high school that your parents are moving away from trained me really well for the job that I do now. So guard your time. Guard your time. Don't waste it on things that are not meaningful, not helpful, not interesting. Now, once you have those skills, the next challenge, once you have all these skills, you're out there, you're reading, you're writing, you're coding, you're exploring, you found some things that you really want to excel in. You're going to go out there in the world. And this next challenge is harder, possibly, than all the rest. When you get out there in the world, that challenge is to figure out what it is you really want to do. And I'm going to finish here by making one not so small request and ask you to go after the hard stuff. Don't settle for the easy problems the way my generation did and the generation before mine. Before those 2 generations, the geeks were awesome. The geeks were amazing. You look at what the geeks did from let's say the late 1800s until say 1960. Let's look at what those geeks did. Let's see, they brought us cars, planes, first steps into space. That's pretty awesome. The telegraph, the telephone, the earliest computers. They brought us electricity. They got electricity to go around the world. How awesome are refrigerators? Could you imagine going through this pandemic without a refrigerator? That'd be pretty rough. These geeks, they brought us fertilizer to feed the world and penicillin to keep it alive. Now, since then, what have the geeks done since 1960? Well, we got to the moon, but we can't do that anymore. So I don't think that one counts. So I don't think we can count that one. Oh, we got the internet. We got the internet, so we can send tweets at each other and memes and such. Maybe that's not so good. I don't know. What do we have since then? Not so much. Not nearly as much as the old school geeks did. So, what happened? These last 2 generations, my generation before it, we got distracted. We got distracted making money using these machines to solve easy problems. But I got news for you. We took all the easy problems. We took all the easy problems. We're leaving the hard problems for you. leaving the hard problems for you. But I'm starting to see a change. I'm starting to see a change in my students as they're coming out of college. They've learned that at such a young age, it's really amazing. They've already learned that it's a lot easier to make money than it is to make a difference. And they're choosing to do the hard thing. They're choosing to try to make a difference. They're choosing to go after the really hard problems, the really meaningful problems, the problems they might not be able to solve, the problems that possibly no one will be able to solve. And I really admire them for making that choice. It's not the choice I made when I came out of school. You know, I taught high school for a semester. That was way too hard. But then I went and I was a bond trader for 4 years, and that was way easier. But I see my students now, they're not taking that easier path. They're not taking that lucrative path. They're taking on the challenge. They're aspiring to do something really difficult. So I'm asking you, aspire to solve those hard problems. It's going to be your world soon. You're going to have opportunities. You're going to have tools. You're going to make tools that we can't even imagine now. And I can't wait to see the world that you're going to build. So thank you very much. I can't wait to see, and I hope some of you choose to come here to Art of Problem Solving and do it, but I can't wait to see the hard problems you're going to try to solve. Now, fire away. If we can open up the chat here.
Sure. Let me open
Let's
up
use the chat, and I will try to pick off questions as they come in and answer whatever questions people have until we get to the end of time.
Yeah. But sure. Before that, we have something little special thing for you within your time. So can you stop sharing and then I will start sharing?
Certainly.
Yeah, we'll have the
Certainly.
Q&A after that. I promise. This morning we have a very tight schedule. We cannot even have Q&A. So.
Sorry.
Yeah. Let me share screen, and then let me share the sound. Okay, so we have something very special for Richard. Let's play it. Hey, will you play? One second. Sorry, let me try it again.
William's gone.
Yeah, it's not easy, like playing stuff. Okay. Let me share the screen again. Hopefully this time it'll play.
Hi, Mr. Rusczyk. Thanks for giving the exciting seminar at our third Rochester Math Festival. Our coaches and the students have something to tell you.
We wanted to thank you for everything you've done with Art of Problem Solving and for the math community as a whole.
For us as students, AOPS has been a cornerstone in our math journeys, providing opportunities for us to go beyond the standard math taught at school.
We use books from AOPS in all of our classes at RMC, and they help both our coaches and students to teach and learn math in a way that's not only informative, but fun and engaging.
Hi, Mr.
For us as students, AOPS has been a cornerstone in our math journeys, providing opportunities for us to go beyond the standard math taught at school.
We use books from AOPS in all of our classes at RMC, and they help both our coaches and students to teach and learn math in a way that's not only informative, but fun and engaging.
Your dedication to students has made the math world a better place.
I have been using ALPS from level 2. It provides challenging math and is fun to work with.
AOPS math is really fun and engaging and really got me into math.
I've been using the AOPS curriculum for the past 3 years and have gained an amount of knowledge that simply isn't possible from a standard school math program, especially learning to efficiently solve problems using multiple different methods.
Happy
birthday, Mr. Rusczyk. Thank you for making math fun and interesting for students across the country.
AOPS is a great resource to expand your math knowledge beyond the school curriculum. It starts with the fun and engaging Beast Academy and evolves into more serious problem solving.
AOPS makes math more fun and interesting.
To do in the future. Teaching other kids, teaching my classmates. I didn't realize how much that was setting a path for me. But one of my teachers once remarked to me in high school that she watched me when someone would bring me their homework and be like, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me with this? I wouldn't tell them how to do it. I would ask them questions and I would help them learn how to do it well enough so that they wouldn't have to then ask me how to do the next one and then how to do the next one. They would learn how to ask those questions of themselves. And this was just something that I just did and really enjoyed doing. And that teacher, who actually would become a pretty good friend of mine when I got older, just pointed out that I had a natural instinct for something that I would turn out to really enjoy and really love doing. Someone asked, what was my college major? I was a chemical engineer. So I decided by the time I got to high school, by the time I got to college, that I wanted to move beyond math competition. So I didn't even take the Putnam. The Putnam is basically the main college competition. I didn't even take that in college. I went into engineering because I like chemistry as well, and I wanted to build and do things. But it turns out I wasn't, I didn't like chemical engineering that much either. And I would eventually find my way back to education. How do I say AOPS? I say AOPS. Is Harvey really standing? Harvey, say hi. You think they think you're not real. Oh man, now he's crying. It's okay, Harvey. All right. He'll be all right. He'll be all right. He gets a little sensitive because people don't believe he's there. Talks and talks and talks and nobody but me listens. Where do I live? I live in San Diego. It's gorgeous. I did try Minnesota. For 2 months, but it was February and March, which I got to say, maybe not Minnesota's best months unless you really, really like the cold. I started so when did I start AOPS? I wrote the first 2 books for math competitions back when I was in college. That was 1993, 94. And then this company started in 2003. So a question, what inspired me to take up what we do today? And a little bit of what I mentioned when I was back in high school, but even going further back is just, I didn't have the sorts of resources to learn from. I had to get old tests and work on them. And I also didn't have access to many students like me. Like I mentioned, I taught high school very briefly when I came out of college, and I could teach the students who were like you, like all of you, but I had trouble reaching those students who had already tapped out of their math education and needed a parent at least as much as they needed a teacher. And I was 22 back then. You can imagine what I looked like, because all of you now know how old I am right now. So you can imagine what I looked like when I was 22. I looked 10. So instilling conduct and being somebody's parent, that was going to be a lot harder for me at 22. But I really enjoyed bringing the beauty of math to kids who were open to exploring it. So fast forward 10 years to 2003, and there's the internet now. So there's one good thing the internet brought us. It brought us an avenue to use selection bias, is to put up a sign that says we're going to do challenging, interesting mathematics. That would bring the kids to us that we could best serve. Is that background blue because it's a blue screen? It is a blue wall. Let's see. Looking for more questions. There's so much here. How do I say my last name? Rusczyk. It's a lot easier than it looks. Although I've had Polish people explain to me that I both spell it wrong and pronounce it wrong. My great-grandfather took a Z out of our name, and I definitely don't pronounce it the way Polish people would. What is the most efficient way to learn art of problem solving? It's an interesting question what is the most efficient way to learn when you're trying to learn a new skill or trying to learn mathematics. So one thing I really recommend you do, and this is going to be hard for some of you, give yourself a time limit on some of the problems. You don't have to get every single problem right. So for example, if you're training for something like, I don't know, if you're working on math counts problems, if you spent 15 minutes on a math counts problem, it's time to look at the solution and move on. Look at the solution, learn from the solution, ask yourself how you would have come up with that solution, or if there's math used in the solution that you don't know, then you've got some math to learn. Go learn that, mark the question, come back later. So I'm focusing on the efficient word right there. Don't spin your wheels too long on a single thing. Go ask for help. You're stuck for a while, go on the AOPS message board, go to your, you've got a lot of you here, so you're going to be able to find a peer who knows how to do that thing that you want to learn how to do, or a fantastic teacher. Don't spin your wheels on one narrow thing for too long. And someone asking, how did I become what I am today? I don't know. I'm not so sure what I am today, but there was a lot of practice involved, a lot of trial and error. What type of code is art of problem solving? We use probably mostly JavaScript is both the front end and the back end of a lot of our news sites are in JavaScript. The front end of the current website is, a lot of it is JavaScript. The back end of that is, it's older, it's PHP, and MySQL is the database. Or we might have moved on to Maria by now. Why did we create Beast Academy? This is a great question. So back in like 2009, 2010, we were finishing up the middle school, high school curriculum for the most part. And we wanted a lot more people who come and do the fun, interesting math that we're doing. So we had two choices. One is we could start marketing. And well, we're a bunch of math people. We're kind of afraid of marketing. We don't really understand it. But the other option we have is to try to create a pipeline of more students who would be interested in taking on some challenging math problems. So we chose that second option right there and went younger. And since then, I've come to change how I think about that. I don't think about it as creating more people who want to solve hard problems. I think of it as retaining, because I think most kids like solving problems. They like playing games. They like doing puzzles. They are not afraid of the world the way we get when we're older. When you're a little kid, when you were 4, if you can remember back then, when you were 4, you saw adults doing all of these amazing things. They were chopping vegetables, they were riding a bike, they were shooting a basketball, and you wanted to do it too, but you couldn't because you were just 4. But you'd try to do it anyway. You'd try to do those things. Well, maybe not chop the vegetables, but you would try to do some things, but you still couldn't do it. You're still 4, and you'd get really upset. You might cry, you might throw a tantrum, and then you'd run off and quit. But then you'd do something really amazing. You'd come back, probably pretty fast, and you'd try again because you're 4 and you haven't learned yet how to quit forever. And that's something that gets trained into kids. I don't think it's natural. I don't think it's natural for people to quit so quick as they will when they get older. And this is something I saw in a lot of my college classmates. When they hit their first math class, they hit their first science class and couldn't handle it after going all the way through middle and high school, getting hundreds on everything. They hit that first math class that they got a 42 on an exam, which actually probably wasn't that bad a score, because in college, an A might be a 60. In Harvard, a 10 is a 60, but let's not go there. They hit that first exam, got a bad score, decided they weren't smart enough, quit. Back when they were 4, they wouldn't have quit. They just would have tried it again and again until they got there.
Sorry, I just turned it off since they're stunning it. Let me turn it back on so you can see some more questions.
All right. Are there any plans to incorporate more programming into AOPS curriculum? We do have a couple classes in AOPS Online, but we are trying to find the right people to build a whole lot more, both into Beast Academy, because we have robots in Beast Academy, and into our upper levels. So do I like the Chargers? I liked them more when they were in San Diego. I have a lot of family. I have a lot of family from Philly too, so I'm an Eagles fan. But I was a pretty diehard Chargers. Actually, the Chargers quarterback for years, Philip Rivers, was from my hometown in Alabama. So was I the original founder for AOPS? Yes, I was. See, Harvey, they say that you speak in a frequency that only I can hear. I don't know. I don't know. Any of you hear Harvey? No, they don't hear you. Harvey's so funny. Do I have any kids? No, I don't have any children. My wife says she has her hands full enough with me. I like pineapple on pizza, depends on what else is on that pizza. The guy, who is the guy with sunglasses in my videos? Those are my videos. I don't like to talk about that guy. All right, and please do let me know when you have to move on to your next event. How long did AOPS take to code? Oh, we're still coding. I built the community. That took 2 years. What do you say to someone who is smart but hates math? You need to give them better math. You need to give them some more interesting problems. One of the reasons some kids will come to hate math is because they're taught that it's arithmetic. They're taught that it's just a bunch of things to memorize, and that actually is pretty boring. And then you've got to get them over another hump, which is then you start to show them the interesting math and they can't do it. They've been able to do all of the easy, boring stuff, and then suddenly you show them something hard. So you got to kind of lead them along slowly. One of the ways I've heard really strong math team coaches when they're trying to build a culture, one of the things they'll start with is games. Because most games, you don't always get it right in a game, you don't always win. So you try to build that kind of resilience, that toughness, that fight that expectation of always being able to succeed. All right. Trying to find questions I haven't answered already. It is hard to find the actual questions in this chat now. Do I shout at people when they do bad? The only person I might shout at is myself. I don't get angry or upset with people. I do sometimes get upset with computers though, and definitely telephones. I don't like telephones. What inspired me to start writing books? I mean, books are the way I learn. That really is one of the things that has really fascinated me since building Art of Problem Solving is realizing that people learn in very different ways. I don't learn anything from videos. My wife will tell you that's because I don't listen too well, but I do learn really well from books. I don't learn well from classes either, but a lot of people do. A lot of people need to be in a social environment. For me, I need to be in the corner with a book, and I need to be working on things myself. I started writing books because that was for me the best way that I learned. I also really enjoy writing, but I'm not very good at writing a lot of other things. But I was pretty okay at writing math, and I had some people who could help quite a bit. Sorry for the long pauses. There's a lot of mess in the chat now. Oh, what am I doing now to Art of Problem Solving? I mean, mostly I'm in meetings and writing email. For the last year and a half, for most of the last year and a half, I was the only person, I'm at the office right now, I was the only person on the second floor. So I had 9,000 square feet all to myself. During a lot of that time, I was doing a lot of things, including even working in the warehouse, helping send out books. Because there were not many people in the office. I had the whole upstairs, the warehouse crew had the downstairs. So I did a lot of little pieces of other people's jobs. I was even the IT person for the building, and I'm not very good at that either. Po Shen Lo, who's the coach of the US IMO team, once made the comment that to be a CEO, that means you have to be bad at everything, because you're the backup everything for the last year and a half. That's definitely what I was. But now people are starting to come back to the building, and we're starting to build for the future. And that's really exciting. So that's what I do a lot of now is doing the kind of longer term planning for where we're going to go. How many digits of pi do I know? 9. I do not know many digits of pi. Well, I know all the digits, I just don't know what order they come in. What area of math do I like the most? It's hard. It's hard. Probably some of the areas of discrete math and geometry. And then the algebra is a little bit behind those, and then number theory is much farther down the list. Still looking for favorite part of AOPS. I mean, it's got to be the students. It's got to be, I mean, they don't let me teach anymore, but when I was teaching, like that was such a thrill to see all the students, to see them all so excited. When I started teaching pre-algebra, I was expecting not to enjoy teaching pre-algebra, you know, because I'd been teaching geometry and teaching some of the advanced classes, and I figured I'll go down to pre-algebra. Is that really going to be fun? Is that going to be interesting? It was enormously fun to teach the pre-algebra class, because the students are so excited, and just starting to develop some mathematical sophistication at that point. That was enormously fun. Probably the most memorable for me is just those first experiences of just having, you know, just my eyes open to how much fun it is to be part of that moment when somebody is starting to realize, oh, this is something I really love to do, and this is something that I might get really good at. What process did we go through to build art of problem solving? I'd say the most important thing is building a really good team. So that is finding other people who have similar interests and complementary skills. So finding people who are good at things that I'm not good at, and I've got a lot of things to choose from there, and combining them in interesting ways to do amazing things. So that is the general process that we went through. We started off with the website. We had the original books from when I wrote about competitions, but we started off with the website. We started building out textbooks. And then actually at the same time, when we started the website, we started the online school as well. And when we started the online school, we realized, oh, we need textbooks to complement the classes. Because when we first started the classes, we were assuming the students knew all the fundamentals, which, you know, that wasn't fair of us, because we didn't know the fundamentals before we learned them as well. So then that's why we built out the textbooks to help deliver that as well. Books are so thick, how can you manage to write them? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. You need good editors. So whenever you're going to write something, find somebody that you trust to tell you when something isn't good enough, and that you'll listen to. You know, somebody who's going to cover it with red ink, hand it back. It's not good enough to go out there. That is critical. If you don't have good editors, you will not be a good writer. All right. Favorite mathematician or scientist? Probably the most impressive is if you look at some of the old work of some of the Greek mathematicians like Archimedes, what Archimedes was able to do without having modern notation, really amazing. You know, like a lot of the thinking that they had back then was pretty close to calculus without the notation of algebra. Really, really amazing stuff. Favorite language? I'm guessing that might be a programming. I started learning Haskell before the pandemic. The pandemic blew that hobby away, but that was a lot of fun. Functional programming is a lot of fun. JavaScript is fun because you can do all sorts of wacky things with it, and some of them maybe you shouldn't do. Best way to learn exponents. I mean, one thing to do with exponents is don't try to memorize the rules. Think about what the exponent actually means. 2 to the third power. You're just multiplying 3 2's. So 2 to the third times 2 to the fifth. Well, I'm multiplying 3 2's and then I'm multiplying 5 more 2's. That gives me 3 plus 5. That's 8 2's. So that's 2 to the 8, 2 to the 8th power. Go back to what the notation actually means, and you'll find that you're going to be able to handle the problems a lot better. Where in San Diego do I live? We live in Poway, and the office is in Rancho Bernardo. What is my favorite AOPS video? It's got to be the least common multiple video from pre-algebra. You can go check that one out later. I got a lot of exercise that day. Oh, I'm not allowed to pick my favorite Beast Academy character. Although I did name Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. That came from one of my favorite plays. What do I do in my spare time? Unfortunately, the pandemic just completely wiped out all of my hobbies. So I'm trying to figure out how to get them back. I'm learning Haskell by Haskell, I don't know how to pronounce it, programming language by doing Project Euler problems. That was one of my favorite hobbies at the time. I was trying to learn how to play guitar. That was not going very well. I exercise a lot. I read, and then I read some more. All right. Sorry, I'm still looking for questions. The names of our books. Art of Problem Solving or Beast Academy. Anything with one of those on there, those are our books. Oh, do I like puzzles? I definitely like puzzles. That is that would probably go on one of the things I do with my spare time. We have some pretty amazing puzzle creators and puzzle solvers. In fact, one of the people here at Art of Problem Solving was the world puzzle champion several years ago. All right. I don't know. I think y'all are getting tired because all I keep seeing is the same questions over and over again. Advice for the next generation. I mean, you had 45 minutes of it already, but that would really be, you saw a lot of it right there. Find something that you really love doing and then learn how to do it really well. Be nimble. You're going to have to change lanes many times in your life. So be flexible, be willing to change, be willing to go explore new things. That's going to be just the most critical thing for your generation, because the world is going to change very quickly, very, very quickly for you. Find good people to work with. That's another one. Do I know of Canyon Crest? Fantastic school. We actually had someone just join the team here to help develop our science curriculum out of Canyon Crest. Will we make a new Beast Academy series? We're working on Beast Academy Science now. So we will start having Beast Academy Science books come out probably next year. And first level 1 is coming out soon as well, the first books of that. What is Beast Academy? It's our elementary school curriculum.
Richard, are you okay?
What are some hard problems? Go ahead.
Are you okay with the speed that they spamming the chat? Like, I mean, they are sending too fast. Can you even read it?
Yeah, I mean, I can filter through and find questions here and there. But
good.
When do you need to stop for your next event?
We just have a award ceremony and then we have a game night. But I think they love to see you. Just like it's up to your time. If you want to do like a little bit more time, it will be fine.
Sure, I'll go until about 3 my time, which is about 15 more minutes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
All right. Hard problems this generation is going to solve. Oh, there's a long list. I mean, one of them is just, I mean, the world is going through some pretty significant demographic changes. You know, where people are living longer. That's a wonderful thing. People are having fewer and fewer kids. So you're going to have a much, you know, you go back the last 100, 150 years, you had a much higher ratio of young people to old people. That's reversing in a lot of communities now. Some countries it's happening earlier than others, like if you look at Japan, and in lots of places in Europe and China as well, due to some of the policies they had 30, 40 years ago. So how the world is going to adjust to that, I don't know. We clearly haven't solved how to deal with pandemics very well. And, you know, it's not like those are not ever going to happen again. So we're going to see that one again. You know, who knows what sorts of climate issues we're going to face. You're definitely going to have to deal with that. Internet security, there's a big one. Yeah, I think we've seen, you know, various parts of various infrastructure, various companies that have been completely debilitated by internet security, figuring out how that's actually going to work. Getting to Mars. You know, I think your generation should be able to do it. You know, we've got people in my generation who are working on it. I think your generation can get there. And I think that would be awesome. You know, if there were one thing I would really like to see before I finally go, I would like to see us get to Mars. So that would be another one that I would choose. It'll be interesting to see how far AI goes. Yeah, actually last night I went out to dinner with the first person I ever taught online. He's now, he's got to be in his 30s now, and he works at OpenAI. And we talked about some of the research, some of the work that he's doing, which is actually elementary math, AI research. And we're working with OpenAI on some projects as well. So it was nice to see him. So I think, you know, figuring some things out. I mean, there's going to be tons of things in the medical space. Go read about CRISPR. You know, that is really, really fascinating science. Those are some hard problems. And, you know, there are going to be all sorts of just social and political problems. Those never end. Oh, improving the internet might be another one. I would love an internet that doesn't have ads everywhere. How many AP classes to take? I only took 2 tests. I might have taken 4 classes. I mean, I wouldn't go trying to just pile up a bunch of trophies. You know, I understand the way the college application works. I'm not sure that even works anymore for college applications. Mainly focus in areas that you actually really enjoy or really want to learn more about. Hopefully your school has at least somewhat of an enlightened policy about GPA. With some of the schools around here at one point, they would give 5s for the AP classes, but only a 4 if you went to the local university, which is UCSD, a quite good university, and took classes there. So I had some students who had taken all the science classes in their science and math classes in their high schools that would go to wanted to go to UCSD to take more physics or more biology, more math, but had an incentive to stay in school and take AP French history or whatever. I mean, I'm sure AP French history is fine for the right student. Wasn't right for him. So, you know, take the classes that are going to be meaningful. And if that means you're going to go off to your local university to take upper level science classes and get a 4 instead of a 5, go to the local university and take the science class. Your time is precious. Don't waste it. Looking for questions I haven't already answered. Am I the CEO of AOPS? Yes, I am. When on AOPS and stuck on the hard problems and don't understand the solutions, what should you do? Use the community. I mean, the community, you got tons of brilliant people there who actually, they're there to talk about math. They enjoy helping other people through it. So you share the problem, you talk about the solution, and then you talk about what you don't understand. This gets you over. You got to learn how to ask questions. Like if you look out, like some of the most productive people, they're really powerful, really good at going and asking questions. You go, it's one of the great things about the internet is you can go engage with experts in just about anything. You know, if you're really into programming and you're stuck on something, you go on the Stack Exchange, you ask a question there, you're going to get some of the best programmers in the world who are going to answer you. If you're stuck on a math contest problem, you're going to come to Art of Problem Solving because we've got some of the best, the best math competition participants in the world are there. So go there, go where the experts are, go where the people are who have the knowledge that you want, and ask, just ask, explain where you're stuck, explain what you don't, point directly at what you don't understand, and people will be able to engage even better with you. Why do AOPS online classes use text and images and not audio video? We do have a separate AOPS Academy virtual campus now that is developing these video classes, but I'm going to talk a little bit about why we structure our online classes the way we do. A big part of it is the efficiency of learning. People can read a lot faster than they can listen. And even more powerfully, they can reread. If a teacher says something in your class and you didn't hear it or you didn't quite catch it, you didn't quite understand it, you can't re-listen to it. In our online classroom, something's in the online classroom, you don't understand it, you can sit there and read it again and again and again. You can ask questions at any time. It's not going to interrupt the flow. In an audio video classroom, it's going to interrupt the flow. You're going to have a chat that looks like this. In our online classroom, the chat does not look like the chat room does here. It all comes just to the instructors, and the instructors can pick and choose and not have one student dominate the class. But it also allows multi-threaded conversation. So I, as an instructor, I ask a question. I get a lot of responses from students. I can engage with multiple ones of those. I can weave them together to create a story in the classroom. I can pick off various students and hand them to assistants so the assistants can deal with them, can work with them privately. These are all things that are much harder to do in an audio video fashion. Going back to that, I mentioned that science website that I was on an advisory board. One of the things they did at the beginning of that was they polled students and asked them, would they want video interviews with these scientists like the ones I'd mentioned that were on this panel, or would they prefer to have a print interview? And it was 98% of the students wanted the print interview because they could read it so much faster than listening to it. What is my opinion on Bitcoin? I wish I'd bought a whole lot of it about 10 years ago, and we'd be doing okay. It's a fascinating new technology, and the game theory behind it. I don't know do I know Ben Orlin, the author of Math with Bad Drawings? I don't know him personally, but we at Art of Problem Solving, we've done some work with him. I do know Po Shen Lo, who is the coach of the US IMO team. I've gone to dinner with him actually quite a few times now. Learn one programming language deeply or multiple programming language, only some of them? That's an interesting question. I mean, I think the answer is both. It's not, as you know, that's kind of a dodge, but you do want to learn one programming language deeply enough to, you know, that you're going to do something really challenging with it. And then like learning multiple language, I think you want to learn one pretty deeply, pretty early on, and then start exploring others that are well fashioned to solve other problems. Maybe it's not your first language that you're going to learn deeply, but in your first three, there's going to be one that you should go pretty deep with. Roll Tide. Yeah. How do you code? I'm not sure exactly what that question means. When I was coding for AOPS, I wrote a lot of JavaScript and a lot of PHP. The best way to learn to code is similar to learning math, is get in there and do the work yourself. What languages do I know other than English? JavaScript and PHP. And thus endeth the list. I do not know any foreign languages. I tried to learn some Spanish, did not get very far. How do you make JMO? I mean, it's practice to make the Olympiad. You know, it's different strategies for the AIME. I mean, you got to learn the math, and then the AIME is usually the big barrier for a lot of students. And the challenge there is to get all the problems right that you know how to do. And that sounds pretty obvious, but the challenge on the AIME, first of all, you got 15 problems there, you got 3 hours. And, you know, there are a lot of students out there who can do 9 or 10 of those problems, but only get 4 or 5 right. And a big part of the reason they fail to fulfill their potential, and this was definitely true for me for a while as a student, is they aren't organized enough in their actual work. This is, you know, they're using the wrong tactics. You know, their scrap paper is a complete mess. Mine was a complete mess when I was a student, until I decided I wanted to get rid of all of the careless mistakes I made. So what I started doing on the AIME was every single problem got 1 sheet of paper. You know, on the AIME, I could often do problems 1, 2, and 3 easily, all on 1 sheet of paper. That's not at all what I would do. 1 sheet of paper. This is number 1. I would put 1 up in the corner, and I would slow myself down, write slowly, write neatly, to avoid making careless mistakes and to allow me to go back and check my work more easily. So that was one big, really important strategy, was just to slow myself down, be more organized in my thinking. It turns out that's a useful strategy in other spaces too. I don't always follow that strategy, but it is a useful strategy to just slow down just a little bit. Organize your work, write neatly. And then the other thing is just approaching the tests, is having, and that comes from experience, practice under test conditions, to learn how to know when to go back and check your work, how best to organize your work so that you can go back and check it easily, how to catch your mistakes as you're making them rather than later, and how not to panic when things aren't going well. Asking what species you are, Harvey. He says he's a rabbit. I think he's messing with y'all. All right, I think y'all are ready for your awards ceremony. I remember when I was at math competitions, you know, they'd have the awards ceremony, they'd put the old person up on the stage, and I'd be out in the audience just being like, make the old guy stop talking. Let's get on with the awards ceremony. So I'm thinking that's probably what some of y'all are feeling right now. So I'm gonna let y'all go. Thank you so much for having me here and for the happy birthday wishes. I really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the competition.